welcome back to another very special chapter of The Stars Above. As you can see, it's twilight. I want to keep my voice down. We don't want to disturb the spirits, so I'm just going to jump right into it. Chapter 32, A Mother's Love. When I was 19, my mother approached me with a choice made in search of salvation, one she believed would allow her the chance to begin again, turn back the clock, and finally make things right. But it was something I couldn't bear hearing, nor stomach the thought of fruition. "Icarus," she said, smiling, "I've been giving this a lot of thought, and, seeing as how I'm healthier and doing much better now, I want to have another kid, artificially, through a donor." Time came to a drastic halt as my adrenaline spiked, having triggered a defense of fight or flight. An entire childhood of suppressed resent boiled over at once, and all went red. I was without restraint, like a dormant beast woken carelessly, thrashing at its kin. "How dare you?" I said. "How dare you even think to propose such a selfish idea to me, to Evan, least of all yourself? In what fucking world of yours does this make sense?" "Icarus, please," she said. "You have to understand, to trust me. Stop. I don't want to fucking hear it." My little brothers, Stephen and Aiden, were only an idea, yet I imagined their youth. Forlorn lies of disaster flashed before my eyes like a toy picture wheel of sliding horrors, old and new alike. While seemingly righteous in the defense of two unborn boys, truth be told, they weren't my real concern. I was overwhelmed by the frustrations of a life cruel and unfair to the child pouting within me, one I was in fear of living through again. "Just look at yourself," I said with an ember tongue. "Your body couldn't handle it, and how many pills are you still on? Healthier? You haven't been healthy a day in your life." "I can do better, I promise," she pleaded. "Just give me the chance. I'll get off the meds. I can handle it. This is what I'm supposed to do. It's what I'm meant for in this life." "You had a chance with your children once. You couldn't kick the shit and weren't there for us. You couldn't handle it then, and you won't now." Selfishly, I'd sharpen the dagger and drive it into the agonizing wounds of our undoing. No detail was spared as I brought forth our addictions, self-inflicted abuse, the childhood we'd been stripped of, innocence lost, and the lives we'd painfully endured. I went so far as to blame her for our family's curse, that with credence she forced its dread upon us through validation it was given, having fed the beast until it consumed us entirely. Further I tore into pains unspoken, going deeper still until reaching her heart. For an unrelenting nature, I declared to no end more, no point more, than that of her failure as a mother. "In every way, you failed us, Mom," I said. "You failed to be there for us, provide for us, even love us, and you'll fail that child too." My mother dropped to her knees, tears pouring as she'd begged between gasps of air. "Please," she said, "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'll do anything. I love you, my Icarus Mikhail, more than life itself." There was a rise within my mother, an opportunity she sought to turn back time and make things right, an understanding that there had been a magic to our lives unaccounted for, that it all happened for a reason, and a higher power was at play of which could break the chains of damnation tethered from generation to generation. However, while she rose, a monster had grown within me whom wished to bring her fall. In embodying such pain, fear, and resent, I'd become the curse itself, an architect to my own catastrophic existence. The guardian son to bring salvation to a soul pleading for redemption became he who dare stand in her way. Who was I to pass judgment? Who was I to cast the stone of ferocity? Who was I to disregard her feelings? I sought to tear apart my own mother out of self-hatred, having absorbed the toxicity of malice while willfully administering its poison. Life was lost to me. There was no more understanding of compassion, empathy, or forgiveness. It was so much easier to fault than support, simpler to scorn than nurture, and I'd become quicker to hurt than love. That woeful night is remembered in vivid detail. I can see the tears which trickled down her rosy cheeks. I can hear the cries as she begged on 2 knees for my forgiveness. I can feel her delicate hands wrapped around mine as she screamed amends for ruining our lives. What evils must she have seen resting in the eyes of her firstborn as I belittled her every plea? There was a ring of truth in knowing it was never her fault, but still, I'd shame her into the bowels of condemnation. As if possessed by fury, the thick clouds of wrath had settled, while an unjust persecution left me blind to any light beyond the fog of mind. Who that was, I'll never know. It's difficult not to harbor sorrow and regret for my actions. However, as I've aged and come to understand such disastrous recollections, the power in its purpose is felt. Now it is I who's rewound time to take careful notice of the boy in ruins, and in peeling back each layer of his anger, I can focus solely on my mother. It's so wonderfully clear. The resolve and truth our family sought was right before me. No matter how sharp the dagger, nor how deep its blade was driven, it hadn't pierced my mother's heart, for I drove it into my own. I can see myself raise the gavel of punishable judgment, yet with each strike laid upon the nails of her crucifixion, she remained defenseless in acceptance. Having been beaten and battered by the one sworn to protect her, she knelt gracefully in her most vulnerable state, with only one look in her eyes, that of unconditional love for her son. It took me over a decade to realize what occurred in those moments shared alongside my mother. It took living through the pain of her passing. It took finding, loving, and cherishing both Celine and Thea. It took every damn mistake made, trauma to resurface, and boundary crossed. It took standing before Celine on that destined day, with her dagger deep within my chest, to truly see what was so evidently before me all these years. My mother would never come to know before her passing, but in those profound moments of sacrifice, she alone had broken the cycle of viciousness which befell our family, and she'd done so with unconditional love. It may have taken her a lifetime, but she'd finally discovered a way to turn back the clock, for it is only in the magic of love that we're able to bend time and space. In returning to that moment in this way, I'm now able to express my utmost faith in her as a mother. It's no longer her cries which echo through my mind, but the playful laughter of my little brothers who she'd birthed into a world of color. I can sense the joy it brought her spirit to follow, and feel the love she so desperately wished to make up for. I know she resides within, and that I carry her as the son she always believed me to be, the one who continues to hold her still beating heart in his hands, just as Celine Hawk holds that of her mother's, Kimmy Lee. On 2 knees, my mother remained with hands wrapped in mine. "I just don't understand, Mom," I said. "Why would you want to make such a foolish choice?" To which she stood and replied with a story of her own, one I'd never heard before. My mother suffered an abysmal life, having fled home at the age of 14 after being released from a psychiatric hospital. However, her mother symbolized a grounding presence, and in choosing to run, the distance between them grew unbearable as pain followed. In her early 20s, my mother sought to return home, having wished for a second chance between them, one in which to make things right. She phoned her mother in tears while pleading forgiveness over resentment held. They spoke well into the night, having finally come to an understanding that their love was stronger than the hardships of their past. That with open hearts set on a true beginning, they could live happily together. My mother planned on dropping everything to be with, care for, and love her while correcting the mistakes of yesteryears. And before ending their call, her mother would express just how much she always loved her. She woke early the next morning with a newfound sense of purpose, having called her mother to say she'd arrive in a few hours, but there was no answer. She'd try again and again, to no avail. Growing desperate with worry, she rang a friend who lived nearby, requesting he check on her. He'd arrive at the house to find she'd passed in her sleep. Her mother died shortly after their call, after they'd promised to make things right, the night before returning home. While it wasn't her fault, my mother never stopped blaming herself for it. nor came to believe she'd truly heal that wound. She wouldn't stop blaming herself for anything in life, or her children's lives to come, after that morning. In choosing to wrap those chains of damnation around her own neck, she'd suffocate through an existence of willful sorrow. My mother was the strongest person I'd ever known, yet carried a bottomless void that she'd been hopeless to fill. As sad a story it may have been, magic remains in the underlying beauty. It's said one can die of a broken heart, but what if the same can be said of one that's been mended? Her mother lived through a horrendous life of regret just as well. It's poetic to think that which allowed her to pass peacefully and be carried by light to the great endless night was forgiveness found in the grace of her daughter. That those last words shared, "I have always loved you," were enough to heal those wounds, fulfill a purpose, and grant passage from this world, having known her life was not in vain. And just as her mother had shared them, those sacred words became the very last of which my mother spoke to me, having fulfilled a purpose of her own. It's quite the paradox for death to be life's greatest teacher. While Celine and I suffered through the loss of our mothers, being left to believe we'd never made things right, they'd pass with this same undying love for us. A love we may not have understood as children, forgiven in ways we couldn't hold, and shown in ways we couldn't see. But the underlying beauty of such fate was in their guidance towards a mother who could both deliver and help us understand that love, the one destined to become our second chance, Thea. While there are things which could have been expressed in better ways, my actions taken and words used weren't meant in hopes that Celine would come to understand the love I hold for her, but for her to remember, reach for, and embrace the boundless love a mother holds for their child, always. Once my mother finished her story, I trembled in remorse. "Icarus," she spoke softly, "it scares me to think that if I don't have this child, when the time comes for you and Evan to leave home and start your own lives, that I'll take mine. I've failed my boys, and soon I'll lose you both. I can't live with that guilt any longer. I must do this. I must make things right." I took her in my arms as if to never let go, an embrace of which time stood still. The misery of anger, fear, and resentment began to wash away. The clouds that left me blind to her light slowly parted, and the fire of a once dormant love was reignited. In that infinite period, the parallels were drawn, having spent an eternity as the jailers to our own imprisonment. To suffer was a choice, and in running from ourselves, we'd fail to recognize that sense of release so desperately longed for was in each other's arms all along. Peace wasn't an idea to hope would arrive one day, but the love of togetherness. And while this understanding became fleeting, if only for a moment, her eyes revealed the intrinsic nature of my being. I hadn't been my past, pain, nor longing. I was and always will be Icarus Mikhail, my mother's guardian son. On March 21st, 2009, Stephen and Aidan were born, having changed our world forever. I can only imagine what it must feel like for a mother to hold the essence of creation and lay first sight on the soul of her child, for the look she'd given them wasn't one I'd seen before. It felt as if by giving life, she'd finally received hers, having found the missing pieces to her heart. Stephen and Aidan allowed my mother to see the world both through and within their eyes, in all its unfiltered wonder, where she'd dive back into the vast open oceans of pure imagination and come to view the nightmare we'd lived as beautiful once more, no longer banished to the dark corners of a fragmented mind, for they'd given her a reason to dream again. I've always been obsessed with patterns. Perhaps it's a condition of sensory awareness developed over a lifetime of searching for meaning behind tragedy. Albeit grim, as I watched my mother cradle her baby boys, a brilliant clarity settled. I wondered, had all of it led to this? Was my cruelty that night written amongst the stars for her love? What if the only act strong enough to instill belief back into herself as a mother was the betrayal of her guardian son? A great traumatic riddle began to unravel. My birth into a life of chaos and our connection shared, the acceptance of pain and sacrifices made, each brutal punishment, second held in her arms and tear wiped from her face. All paths led here. It became clear, my purpose had always been to protect that of my mother's. She may have once believed I'd right her wrongs and symbolize a second chance. But now, having seen her reflection in the life of newborn eyes, I knew it'd never been me, but Stephen and Aidan who'd become the birth of her true salvation. Children deserve a loving father just as they do a nurturing mother, but this wouldn't pose a problem, considering Evan stepped with pride into that role. He stood as the father we never had, and the man I wasn't ready to become. In driving himself towards a higher purpose, he assured that those boys never fell victim to the atrocities we'd faced as children. This was his hero's journey. The torch of guardianship had been passed to the hands most capable, his own. For my mother, the years following were cherished as the woman she'd always hoped to become, having learned how to love again, for Stephen and Aidan had taught her to be selfless. I could see it in her every smile and hear it in each laugh. Those newborn eyes of unimaginable purity had become her own. And while she may have kept her haunted past on a short leash, that conscious choice was the catalyst needed in opening her heart to the possibility of change within. Where she'd once believed to have failed as a mother to her children, she'd discover redemptive love and a second chance, having finally made things right. Now, with Celine's dagger pressed against my chest, I'd come to realize that being a guardian to my mother hadn't necessarily meant protecting her, but simply believing in, supporting, and standing at her side with an open heart. She'd spent her life learning how to love Evan and I, so that she could share that love with Stephen and Aidan, just as I'd spent the entirety of my own life learning how to love her, so that I could share mine with Celine and Thea. Everything I lived through, fought through, and felt through led to them in that understanding. That's why the promise was made on that cold December day as Celine's tears fell, an oath of doing anything necessary to fuel the belief in herself while salvaging the bond she shared with Thea, no matter how painful. That was my choice made in search of salvation, a sacrificial love devoted to a daughter's second chance with her mother and a mother's second chance with her daughter. If upon my final breath I'm ever known to have lived a noble life, having done any one thing right, with a ring of truth in my heart, it will have always been that choice. Long ago, someone asked me whether I believed in fate, free will, or destiny, but I couldn't settle on just one, for each occupy a seat at the same table. The fate of choice and chance provide opportunities to exercise free will, and should we give recognition with purity of heart, free will guides us along destined pathways of boundless discovery. From the vast universal plane stemmed creation's dawn of time, birthing that phenomenal force of cause and effect. What once was caused what is, and what is causes what becomes. From stardust came our existence, making the impossible possible, and from stardust we continue to defy all odds, should we choose to. What took a blip of 30 years to grasp had been but billions of years in the making to unfold. My life had never been a random series of horrific events, but a collection of purposeful moments and meaning which manifested itself into that very moment of my heart's cosmic surrender. This was the labyrinth of life, another great puzzle unraveling before me, having finally felt a love I'd forever sought. I now knew how to bend time. So, while standing before Celine in our final moments together, I chose to freeze it as another chapter in a never-ending story came to conclude. I dove into her eyes, those which not only saw the world, but held the world within them. That great hall of infinite reflection, where unlimited choices, paths, and outcomes proved transcendent. No mirror was a lie, and none were shrouded from view. Further I dove into our infinite lives, where she'd suffered through infinite loss of which led to my triggering infinite pains. Then, I watched as Celine's strength grew, until finding herself infinitely free. While this may have seemed to be a final farewell, not an ounce of sadness or regret was felt, for in each reflection I'd kept an infinite promise. In the mind of a madman birthed unto a twisted temporal anomaly, I'd seen that in every life, and all those to continue hereafter, I lived for Celine and Thea. We stood in silence for some time, Perhaps there was a part of her which hadn't wished to leave, or felt more was needed to be said. Either way, this was the path, one Celine knew long before me. I couldn't help but think back on what she'd asked a year prior. If we really are who you believe us to be, a shared soul, don't you think we need to do some of this growth on our own first? A wisdom she carried of which I'd ignore now rang true within me. This was it, my self-realization, a beautiful crescendo, harmonized to the sight of her wings having spread to fly. Finally, I spoke. You will see her, bird, in each reflection, for she rests within your eyes. You'll hear her as you sing, for she'll whisper in your every song. You'll find her in your arms, as Thea holds you in her own, and you will feel her in your heart, where your mother's always been. Thank you for showing me I had the strength within to save myself. I'm so unbelievably proud of you. I have always, and I will always love you, Celine Hawk. There were no goodbyes exchanged, nor further words spoken between us, having been a rather poetic departure. For while Celine had ended this chapter of our story, an even greater journey shared alongside her mother was only just beginning. A heroic tale of endless wonder, inconceivable magic, boundless creation, unimaginable possibility, and undying love. She drove away giving one final look back at me, and that was the last time I'd ever meet Celine's eyes. Although, I'd remain feeling them, for they were mine now too. It was curious. I began to cry in a way never experienced before. Now it was my tears which fell with great humility, having watered the soil beneath 2 solid feet for something beautiful to grow. My heart's doors swung open with the strength of gale-force winds as sirens sang, trumpets blared, and fires roared. A new path had been laid of which led towards profound spiritual growth. It'd be impossible to describe all that was felt in those arcane moments of divine revelation, for to both process and understand those emotions took many, many years to come. Oh, but what marvelous dreams came to actuality from such a fantastical reality. I have a strong distaste for the phrase, "It's better to have loved and lost than never loved at all." That weight is carried in sorrow, often spoken to alleviate the pain of separation. It's a saying reaffirmed by those who not fought to grasp that which lies within themselves. As for those who have, there's certainty in knowing that when love is truly found, it can never be lost. Celine took to the sky and gave her love to the wind, but she'd always remain in my heart. Shout out today's sponsor. Shout out today's sponsor. Fucking go call your mom, call your dad, fucking whoever loves you, go call them. Go call them, tell them you love them back. A lot of people don't do that a lot, you know? We take life for granted. We think we got so much fucking time. We don't. We don't have so much fucking time. We actually don't have a lot of time at all. And it's important to let the people know, whoever you love, it's important to let them know you love them all the time. Do it every day. Send them a text in the morning. Send them a text at night. Who cares if they think it's weird? Just fucking do it. Let that become normality, you know? I'm willing to fucking bet my bottom dollar that Icarus would do anything in his fucking life possible if he could just tell that to his mom one more time. I bet anything. I'll bet anything. So just don't take your family for granted. Don't take the people you love for granted. Don't take your friends for granted. Don't take your pets for granted. Don't take anything for granted. Fuck. Just call them. I hope the sky was really beautiful. I wanted to point you towards it. I know we haven't really done any sunset videos. It's really hard to do the videos at this hour because the wind is so bad. Luckily, the wind is in my sails. The wind was in my sails tonight, which is good. It blew the fire that way. It did not blow the fire in my face. If it blew the fire in my face, I would not have been able to read. I had a hard enough time reading as it is. But I'm not sad. That was just a very beautiful chapter. We're turning sad things into beautiful things. I shan't be sad. But it is okay to be sad, you know. But turn sorrow into something beautiful. That's important. I also really, I really empathize with Celine and her choice to walk away from Icarus. I also understand where Icarus was coming from. I don't want to say that he was in the right to have pushed Celine like he did, but I understand why he did it. I'm sure wherever he is out there in this great big world, he's thinking the same thing. Love is difficult. But it is boundless. And it really doesn't matter what you feel to lose, even in death, because that love is forever. It can never be lost. Always, Bert. Always. Thank you all so much for joining me. For tonight's chapter of The Stars Above.